So I bumped into this article from Design Boom talking about the Nokia design archive. And, this archive had so many experiments and so many cool things, on shapes and forms and different use cases for a phone. And as a product designer, it's impossible to not question yourself about it. Is design for mobile devices dead? Why I'm making this question, why question this? Well, it's simple. Try to ask yourself, when was the last time you felt excited about a new phone model that was gonna come out, right? For us, specifically Apple users, there's not been a lot of excitement every year after year, right? Because not a lot of things really changed in the way that we interact or see mobile devices. They are just rectangles, right? And I think you can fairly say that for Android too, Android devices. Not much has been done really with the shape, materials, and excitement about the shape of the phone itself, right? So let's dive a little bit into it. Let's dive into what happened with the industry and why do I think this is the new norm, and if we think a new norm will ever come out again. Remember, when phones back in the day had their own personality, back then when Nokia wasn't afraid of experimenting new features, phones had a unique form factor, physical keyboards and tactile elements that made the interaction and the experience so much more magical. Everything was thought out for the specific use case that they have. So there was a joy in learning how every new device worked. Every new device was a new experience. I remember I changed phones like 2-3 times in that era, and every brand was different, and every experience was different because the hardware was different, the shape was different, and of course, the interface, the UI had to be different because there were a different way of making every new device. And of course, if you think about it, that was not very effective, market-wise. That was not very easy to do. So you see a pattern there where we try to kind of walk towards a more efficient way of making those devices and kind of standardizing them and letting, that fun go away for the sake of being more effective, in making those products. But it's impossible to not remember that those devices actually represented your own personality. There were devices for businessmen, there were devices for kids, or someone that was more sporty, and so on. You could see like organic shapes in devices, different kind of shapes, different kind of colors, different kind of textures in devices back in the day. And this is something that really isn't a reality anymore for us. The phones became something that is kind of a standard device that you kind of expect a couple of things out of it, but you don't expect much personality out of it. But back in the day, they were really a personal gadget, a personal object that reflected who you were. Of course, there is a downside to that. Those devices were not very efficient. Every time you change the device, you had to learn how to use that new device, although there is a magic embedded in that experience, right? It's not very effective, and you couldn't get a certain set of features that were common and worked in a common way throughout different phones, different models, and so on, especially because the technology was constantly evolving back in the day, right? These devices were not just simple gadgets. They were real personal objects that you carried with you and you were excited to show your friends. And today, the closest that we have to it are the phone covers, the ubiquitous phone covers that, ruin every single aspect of what the designers had such a hard work in making. So let's advance a little bit on the story and let's understand why we get to the place that we got today. So Fast forward in 2007, Apple drops a bombshell in the industry, the iPhone.
Today, Apple is going to reinvent the phone.
The iPhone was so revolutionary in so many aspects because it redefined a whole industry, killed a current industry slowly, and created a whole new industry. And we will get to that soon. So we are not saying that keyboardless phones didn't exist before the iPhone, but the iPhone was the first competent one. The first that, offered like a real tactile experience when typing on the digital keyboard, that offer a good enough digital keyboard that you could actually use, even you have like not very sensible fingers and so on. And of course it was an adaptation for most people, right? You had phones like BlackBerry that were like the top notch of the typing experience, with the physical keyboards, and it was like so easy to type, and it was, and people still had a little bit of disbelief in the iPhone because they didn't really believe that the physical keyboard, the digital keyboard, was going to be something, that people will be adopting. Apple's radical decision into ditching the physical keyboard and every other aspect of the current phone industry was not just about making a sleeker look.
That are fixed in plastic and are the same for every application. Well, every application wants a slightly different user interface, a slightly optimized set of buttons just for it. And what happens if you think of a great idea 6 months from now? You can't run around and add a button to these things, they're already shipped. But what we're going to do is get rid of all these buttons and just make a giant screen. A giant screen. Now,
but also about improving the user experience, making sure you could jump from one model to another and still keep using, the same device in an effective way. The learning curve will definitely be way less steep every time you change an iPhone. Suddenly the diverse, sometimes whimsical and fun aspect of the world of mobile design was replaced by a clean, uniform, and sleek aesthetic. And what does it mean to us, right? The iPhone standardized things. One big screen, everything else handled by the operational system and the user interface within the big screen you were looking at. And while that consistency boosted usability and app development, which is a new industry that Apple created with the iPhone, it was not only that they changed the phone industry forever, they created a whole new economy around the new phone that they had created. And other brands actually followed suit, and created their own app markets, just like Google Play Store. Right? They boosted usability with that. They boosted, the way people could adapt to a new phone, every new model that they launched. And that made so much easier for them also to create new products because they already had a standard. But that also marked the end of an era. The end of the fun, whimsical shapes and crazy phones, different screens, different colors, different lights, different everything. Now everything was handled by the user interface, and that's where my profession comes, digital product designers. That's why product design today for digital products is something so important, because most of the experience today is within a screen and you have to make it right. So let's look at what we kind of gained and what we lost with that. Well, on one side, standardization made things way much easier for us for creating new products, creating new apps and solutions, and switching between different models. I would not say brands, because if you use Apple devices and you use Android devices, it's gonna take a while for you to adapt, for sure. On the other hand, the joy of handling a new device, to me, it's almost completely gone. Unless you come from a very bad device to a good device, you are not gonna notice a lot of difference between devices and between models, right? So, that thing about having your personal object, your phone as your personal object, is completely gone to me, unless you have like this crazy covers, but it's still the same kind of phone. It's not the same, right? It's not the object itself anymore. And I have a final question for you. I wonder if in our pursuit of making everything so much more efficient and making everything so much sleeker and minimalistic, we kind of lost that magic into making products. And you can see a lot of people talking about that also in architecture or in interior design or in cars, or you see people kind of reminiscing on the past all the time about how we kind of lost the magic on building things. And you see a lot of brands building new products that kind of try to bring that reach for the technology and the shapes and the fun back. So I ask you, did we lose the magic in how mobile devices were designed and what they meant to us? Or you think there's still some magic out there? So thanks for sticking with me. Hope you liked the video. Hope you liked the reflection. See you again next time.